ready to hand you over to the next team. They are called Get It Done!
Hello, and thank you for coming down. We are Johnny, Alistair, Jazz, and Matt, and we are Team Gets It Done. So before we get started, can I take a quick show of hands? Has anyone here ever felt like they've had too many things to do, can't decide what to do first, and as a result, been stressed and unable to work effectively? Okay, a few of us. Luckily, we don't feel like this all the time. We might have a deadline at work, we might have a family crisis, or even perhaps a Northcoders final project. Okay. So the next question is, hands up if anyone knows what the executive function helps you to do. Good. So the executive function is a part of your brain which helps you to plan, organize, and effectively switch between tasks. And for those who have executive function disorder, even the everyday mundane tasks can feel overwhelming. With these users in mind, we have designed an app and an algorithm to help reduce the stress and anxiety of too much choice. Alistair, take it away with the demo.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Hello. So this is our bit further away. Yeah. This is Gets It Done. Now we're going to log into the app here. We can register a new account. But we're gonna use one that we created earlier. So we've got slothmail.com. And we're going to put in our password. By the way, Jazz designed the logo, so well done, Jazz. And when we sign in, we're going to get to a screen that will allow us to view the tasks that we already have in our personal assistant. And it's split into a few categories. So we've got party and home, which have a few tasks in them. Then we have general, which is a little bit more empty. The first thing we're going to do is create a new category. We're going to call it Northcoders. Now, right now, it'll be a little bit empty, so we're going to add a few tasks in just a second, but first, we're just going to make sure that it's worked. There we go. So when we add a category, a task rather, I'll just talk you through this screen. So we have a few options. So we first put in a task name at the top in the little input field, and then we choose a priority or a due date. So we have today, tomorrow, or later. And then we can choose a task duration using the slider there, and that can be anywhere between 5 minutes and 45 plus minutes. And then we choose a category. So we're going to add a task, say, graduate Northcoders. We're going to set it for today, and it's probably going to take about 45 minutes, about the length of these presentations. And we'll add it to Northcoders. And then we're going to add another task, but we're going to use speech recognition here. And this task is going to be called, don't forget to make beautifully described commits. And there it is. And it's going to be set for today again, I think. But it's going to take a lot less time, so we're going to set it to 5 minutes. And then we'll submit it again. So what has happened here is it's brought up a little prompt. So we put a function in here using a little bit of TDD to allow us to figure out if the word count of a task is too high. And what it'll do, it'll give us this little prompt so we can learn more about breaking tasks up to make them a little bit more manageable. And this is called our task assistant. So we'll swipe through here. If we're sort of overall happy with the task itself, we can still submit it, which is what we're going to do now. There we go. And then the new tasks will show up in our task list just there. So we're going to delete the graduate Northcoders one, or mark it as complete rather, and then we're going to start a few tasks. Now, what this part of the app does is it uses an algorithm that will essentially select a maximum of 3 tasks for you to do based off the due date, how urgent they are, how long they're going to take, so that it doesn't give you an overwhelming amount of tasks. And then you click done, and it will mark that task as completed. And there we go. So every task in that batch of tasks is complete. And you can do that again and again, but we're going to look at the settings now. So we have a few different color schemes here. I believe the default one is a dyslexia-friendly color scheme. So it's a cream background. It's got medium contrast. Well, I've got a list of them here. So we have one for color blindness, which I believe is number 2. It's a monochrome design. We have dark mode. Number 4, I believe, is light mode. I could be wrong. And then and then number 5 is just a nice little fun sort of matrix-themed green one that we quite like. So if we whiz through these, there's a monochrome. Oh, there's our default. Yep. Cool. And that gets it done in a nutshell. And to talk about some of the accessibility requirements that drove a lot of our decision making in this app, Jazz is going to come and speak about those now.
Thank you. So when we started planning the app, we realized that accessibility was going to have to be at the very core of it. Because our main audience is people who suffer from executive dysfunction. So that's people with autism, people with ADHD, people with anxiety and depression. They were really our kind of core demographic that the app is aimed at, although we think that it would help everyone be more productive. What we did for this was we made sure the design was very simple. We made sure the functionality was quite easy to follow, so it would never be overwhelming. For example, we kind of decided not to have push notifications for you have 100 million tasks left to do or anything like that, because we thought that would be quite stressful. And so we made sure everything was very, very well contained. Another group of people we wanted to make sure could access our app was people with visual impairments. And also people with learning difficulties such as dyslexia. So like Alistair said, we have different color schemes and things for that. We also tested that it worked with screen readers, and everything was kind of reading out the correct labels for things, which is very important if you might not be able to see fully everything on the screen. And we made sure that it could work properly at the largest font size available on the system so that nothing was cut off and everything displayed. We also added our task assistant as kind of some gentle encouragement into the app as well. I'll take you into our tech stack now. So the front end, I'm going to leave that there. The front end was built in Flutter, which is a Google SDK, and Dart, which is the programming language that's used for that. We decided on this for a number of reasons. We considered React Native. We'd used React before, and so we kind of figured out how it would be able to work that way, but we thought we'd like to try something new. And Flutter compiles well down to iOS and Android, so you don't need to write 2 apps is one of the benefits of that. It was also new to us, and we'd not used it before. We wanted a challenge. It's statically typed. It uses classes and object-oriented programming. And it also has built-in semantics, which means that everything is more easily labeled. And it also has a number of semantics widgets that you can use to make sure that everything is reading correctly for screen readers. We also use an emulator with that, so you can see the changes you're making in real time, and you can also connect up a phone and it will show you all the changes you're making as you go along, which was really handy. It also works very well with our backend, which is another reason we chose it. So I'm going to pass you back over to Johnny, who will explain the backend.
So as you can see, Google Cloud Platform bang in the middle. From the course, we had a knowledge of relational databases, but when we were looking at the types of data structures we were going to be using, we decided that a non-relational database would fit our needs better. And luckily for us, Google Cloud Firestore was easy to get running. You could fire data in quickly just to get tested, and it also integrated very well with Firebase authentication, as it is ill-advised to do your own authentication. It was nice and challenging to get up to grips with cloud technology, and it was a good challenge, and we enjoyed it. I'll pass you over now to Matt, who'll talk about some of the challenges we faced.
Yep. So kind of following on from Johnny there, and also Jazz, we used Dart and Flutter as the front end, which kind of posed a lot of challenges initially, because Dart actually is very statically typed. So if you're missing a semicolon, it's just going to throw errors. And we also came across some unusual things, like the for each loop didn't actually have index. So we couldn't use the index for find out what we're actually iterating over. Flutter itself also had some very unusual behaviors, like trying to render a list on the app screen. it had to be exactly the same type of list. So it couldn't be a mixed array, or it couldn't be a widget if you're trying to render the string array. So how did we kind of get over these? Well, of course, we checked the documentation first, which generally was quite good. Google documentation was quite helpful. But for some of the newer widgets, it was less helpful. So we then turned to Google and Stack Overflow, as many of you probably have done already. And when that didn't work, we used a bit of agile-inspired approach, and we paired and mobbed together to try and overcome these little challenges, which worked really well. I'm going to follow Jazz there and just throw it on the floor. The next thing that we kind of experienced was a real-life issue, and it was just illness within the team. So in the first week, I think 3 of us had at least half a day off. So what that meant is we couldn't work as a team in the same area. But luckily, we kind of already decided to use Kanban board in the project room, but also the GitHub projects, which allowed us to monitor the progress online, but also in the room. So what that meant was people could actually go home and remotely work when they were sick. So that was kind of a lifesaver. Of course, we also had Slack, which helped us to communicate at that time. And again, one more. And the final, probably most complex issue we faced was the speech-to-text, which we initially found quite difficult in terms of implementing. And that was because we had 2 input fields going into 1 output, and it was overwriting what we previously had. So when someone used the keyboard on the phone, it was actually wiping what was kind of already there. So you either had to type very, very quickly, or you'd have really badly spelt words. It's up to you if you want to accept that, but we didn't really want to. So we took a few approaches. We did a bit of pair programming, but it didn't really work. So the thing we actually did is we got someone who didn't work on the project and the implementation of that feature to have a look at the code and tell us what's going wrong. And it was actually Alistair. He kind of said, well, this probably shouldn't be there. And having that third person to come in was actually a really good way of solving this problem. Speaking of Alistair, he's going to finish off, and I'll probably pick those up later.
I'll sort it that way. Cool. So I think that, wait a minute, there's some more tasks to complete. Let's take a look. So let's finish that presentation. Any questions?
Brilliant, round of applause. Well done.